Okay, people, we've covered 1, 2, 3 of the mainline Resident Evil games, and we're going straight into COD Veronica. The real Resident Evil 3. The one that should have been called 3. The one that people don't even bother playing because it's got a subtitle. Now, what should have happened is this should be called Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis should have just been called Resident Evil Nemesis. And what's funny about that is, if the roles were reversed, would people have completely skipped over Nemesis, being like, it's a spin-off, not playing that? And then they would have got COD Veronica, and COD Veronica would be known as the, top pedigree Resident Evil high seller, who would have already had a remake of it. I really do wonder how history would have played out if COD Veronica got the number 3 on the case, which I think is absolutely nuts. I get the marketing of a number on your game or your movie or whatever, and it makes it sell, but just to completely skip over a game because it hasn't got a number on it is just weird. It makes people feel weird when they play it. They just don't think it's worth the time. They don't think enough time was put into the game's development. The budget's not there or whatnot. It's a mentality you have for the game. And COD Veronica suffers because of that, because let me tell you one thing COD Veronica does not suffer from, and that is being a bad game. COD Veronica is top tier, classic, survival horror Resident Evil. It is. If you pride yourself on playing classic Resident Evil games and you don't play COD Veronica, you're just nuts, absolute batshit crazy. And I get it, COD Veronica is far from perfect. It's definitely got a few issues here and there, but it's like top tier. It's way better than Nemesis, way better. That doesn't mean it does everything better than Nemesis. One thing I will never understand with COD Veronica is the fact that it came after Nemesis, yet doesn't have the control improvements that Nemesis brought to the table. So there's a few things that Nemesis does, and that is the whole free movement on the stairs. COD Veronica ditches that completely. You do have the quick turn, which is great. Obviously that's much needed. But when you come to stairs, it's you're at a standstill. You've got to click on the stairs to go up and down the stairs. Obviously Nemesis got away with that, and it was just kind of just fly up and down the stairs. I love that. Another thing that Nemesis did, which didn't need to be done in the other games, but COD Veronica could have done with it, and that's the aiming mechanic, where you aim, and if there's an explosive barrel, you can use the left trigger to aim at it. Well, not the left trigger, but it's like you've got two shoulder buttons, so if you use R1 to aim, if you hold R2, you were aiming at the explosive and not the zombie because of the auto aim. It's the only way to describe that, basically. It worked really well, and COD Veronica could have done with that. COD Veronica doesn't have that, so it's just nuts. But what COD Veronica does have is the longest classic campaign. This campaign is easy 10 hours long. All the other ones were 10 hours long of, I don't know where to go. COD Veronica is long. And I get it, COD Veronica you can fly through in 5 hours. You really can, if you know exactly what you're doing. But the first time you're through it, even if you do everything right, you're not messing about too much, you're still going to be at it at 10 hours. It's a long-ass game. It was 2 discs on the Sega Dreamcast. It was never 1 disc. I never played the Dreamcast version when it first came out. That wasn't until much later. But the game's long, man. It even has an extra save, because usually the whole gimmick with Resident Evil games is to beat it without saving, get to the finale without saving. COD Veronica's got a middle section where you can save because the game's so long and it doesn't expect you to be staring at the screen the whole time. I mean, the achievement, I believe, is under 5 hours. I'm pretty sure it is. I could be wrong with that. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't actually got that achievement yet, which will get you the infinite ammo rocket launcher. I have done it in the past. I actually did it on the Dreamcast version. But like I said, I never had the Dreamcast version back in the day. I got it on the PS2, so it was the COD Veronica X version. I didn't even know the Dreamcast version was a thing. I didn't know it was exclusive to the Dreamcast for a year. I didn't know any of this. Like I said, the internet wasn't really a thing for me back then. I didn't read every gaming magazine. It was just, I knew COD Veronica existed. I was getting a PS2 for that Christmas. I asked for COD Veronica. COD Veronica is one of the first Resident Evils where I beat it myself. I didn't watch anyone play it. I didn't have any help. It was just me against the game, and I won. And it's really weird because COD Veronica is, without a doubt, it's the hardest fixed camera angle Resident Evil game. It is, at least if you ask me. And it's not hard for the right reasons. It's hard because it's a cheap bastard at times. The hunters will just, even when you're on caution, just be like, you know what, you die now. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, all that progress gone. Just because the hunter just decided it was like, yeah, game over. And it's like, it's bullshit like that, why a lot of people, when they're playing COD Rona, they're just like, I haven't got time for this shit. But there are ways around it. Once you know which enemies are where and where to run and how to run around them and stuff like that, you really get used to the mechanics of the game. It's actually pretty easy. It gives you a ton of ammo. There's so many health items all over the place. Honestly, if you know the tricks of the game, you're not going to struggle too much. Like things like that, like you're seeing on screen here, the bats can have a field day with you in this room. Just equip the lighter and they won't come anywhere near you. It's things like that once you know the second time around. The game is so easy, it is. But people do really have a hard time with COD Rona, and I get it. It is a cheap bastard. It will just shit on you, and there's not much you can do about it. It's pretty fucked in that regard. But overall, COD Rona is just a pure classic survival horror Resident Evil game, and I will never understand when people don't play it, and I will never understand when people are like, COD Veronica's not that good though, is it? Like, yeah, it is. Like, are you nuts? Now, when I say it's not perfect, there's some issues where, like, I really wish the two campaigns were separate, so I didn't have to go through Claire's section to get to Chris's section. And also, speaking on that, I really wish Chris's section was longer. Like, do you know when I said the game's like 10 hours the first time you go through it? It's like Claire's is 7 hours of that, and then 3 hours is Chris. Chris's section, you fly through that shit. You do. And there's some bits in Chris's section which I wish wasn't part of it. Like, Wesker puts these like weird like camera drone things around, and if they spot you, they'll bring hunters to your location. It's just kind of like, really? Like, what is this shit? That shit's just weird to me. But the soundtrack, the environments, I love the graphics. The graphics are awesome. And I know people are going to be looking at these graphics and going like, what are you looking at? It's hard to explain. It's the Dreamcast's graphics. It's just in an era that I absolutely love the way shit looked back then. And COD Veronica's built on that stuff. But the environments, the soundtrack, I even like Steve. People hate Steve. I like him. I hated him at first, and don't get me wrong, he's a creep, but by the time he dies, you kind of like, shit, man, Steve wasn't that bad. The acting is, honestly, the acting's an absolute nightmare. It's fucked. It's so bad. And some of the stuff they say, it's just like, what are you saying? Claire talks to Steve like it's his mother. Steve wants to fuck her. But it's like, wait, have you heard the way she's talking to you? Oh, this shit is just bizarre. It'll never not be bizarre. The thing with, like, the Ashford twins, it's just batshit crazy, but in a good way. It's entertaining from start to finish. And COD Veronica is pure Resident Evil. It's what you need. Inject that shit in your veins. It is top 3, easily, fixed camera angle Resident Evil games. There, I said it. Now, do you like COD Rona? You ever play it? You always skip it? Let me know in the comments section down below how you feel about COD Rona. Because personally, I love COD Rona. It's super nostalgic for me. I'll always go back to it now and again. But Capcom, come on now. We want the remake. Alright people, that's all I got. I'll catch you later.